welcome into another episode. Gamblin Gauchos. I'm Rob Bro. He's Kyle Jacobson. He's Money Mainville. Now, as you may be able to tell from the sound of my voice, this is Kyle on with Money. Rob is, I should have come up with something. Rob always made the best excuses for me. Rob is sailing the world right now, so he's not able to join us. But he will be back for week one recap. It's really just week 0, so we're easing into this thing. Typical Rob, missing episodes left and right, but that's okay. We'll get it done. So we're going to do a week 0 recap. A lot to talk about when it comes to really not the game, yes, but then K-State fans, sheesh, they provided a lot of content. We'll get into that. Gonna be honest, Money and I have very little in the way of Arkansas Pine Bluff analysis, but we will talk about what we want to see from the Red Raiders on Saturday. And then, of course, a Payne Powell, Truett and Chandler mailbag brought to you by our friends at Stretch Lab. Get stretched. I think they're open in Lubbock. If not, coming soon. We've been saying coming soon for like 2 months. So I think Chuck was in there getting stretched, but I don't know if that was like a soft opening or if they're open to the public. That's what we have on tap today. Money, looking good. How are you?
Appreciate it. I'm doing fantastic. It's college football on tomorrow, the day after that, the day after that. So it's a great time. Starting to feel a little bit like fall outside. And then you opened the show today, so I didn't have to try and play an AI generated song from my laptop. So thank you for avoiding another very embarrassing moment.
Yeah, that was great. I'm going to be honest, and something I try to do as a leader is hold myself accountable for certain things. I don't feel like it was the best opening, but was it better than 20 seconds of dead air? Hopefully. I feel like that's the bare minimum as a podcaster is when you're speaking, is it better or worse than dead air? If it's worse, then we should probably just hang it up. I will say, Money, a little bit of a bad week in the old personal life, the old career world. Kind of a hole in my heart, and that's because I didn't see you at work this week like I did last week. So that's been a tough adjustment, but I think we'll get through it.
Yeah, it's tough, man. Just glad that I didn't have to hear smart football comment about my shoes and suit pairing this week. So while I am disappointed and saddened that we didn't get to cross paths this week, considering myself fortunate for not catching any strays.
Yeah, Smart is. I think we've determined he's like 41, but really into Coachella and like Gen Z slang and stuff. So I'm surprised he didn't. I don't know, call you like a dripless moron or something. I didn't. I didn't notice anything wrong with your suit and shirt and shoes combo, but Smart's probably more up to speed on what the modern trends are and everything. He's a very trendy kind of guy, it seems. Um, where do you want to start? Do we want to do week 0 first, and then just go from there in chronological order?
Yeah, let's do that. Kansas State, Iowa State, big game, best game on this past weekend. Hawaii Stanford was also really fun. Um, Marquee matchup, two Big 12 championship contenders in a fun game, in my opinion, an ugly game, but I thought that made it fun. Um, my general takeaways from the game itself, because there's a lot to talk about outside of the game, but the game itself, uh, Matt Wells is so back. That Kansas State offense was really, really tough to watch at times. Running halfback dive on 3rd and 1 and it gets stuffed, and then they run halfback dive on 4th and 1 and it also gets stuffed. And then kind of my two other takes, Jaron Bradley almost equaled his production in that game compared to what he did all of last season at Boston College, which was
Yeah,
pretty
he's back.
wild. Um, just thinking about the connection that Matt Wells has with that guy. You know, obviously he's in Lubbock under Matt Wells. I don't think it actually panned out to where he was trending towards going to Oklahoma while Matt Wells was there. But alas, Matt Wells ended up at Oklahoma. That was a popular destination for Jaron Bradley throughout his final season at Texas Tech. And now they're back together, clearly a focal point of their offense this year. And my last takeaway from the game itself is I can't tell if both teams are struggling on the offensive line or if both of those defensive fronts were really, really good. Kansas State has a dude, 44, who was flying off the line of scrimmage. He looked really good. I think it was Orange at Iowa State also looked really, really good. So I think those defenses have some chops. But again, it's week 0 in the pouring rain in Ireland. Tough to evaluate from that standpoint, but thought it was a fun game, all bumps and bruises considered.
Yeah, definitely a mixed bag in terms of both teams and individual player performances. I got to say, Big Citrus might be the front runner for best nickname in college football right now. I love that. Um, if Iowa State could somehow make it to like an Orange Bowl, that would be insane content. The first half of the game, I feel like to some extent you have to just throw it out. Clearly, the weather was a factor in the sloppiness on offense and special teams for that matter. I thought it was funny that they blamed the punt return muff on the opening punt of the game on like the smoke in the stadium. They're like, well, he might have had trouble seeing. I was like, well, he saw it good enough to get right under it, and it hit him right in the chest. So either good guess on his part, or maybe the ball was just slippery and he could see just fine. But yeah, both offenses, 3 and outs. Iowa State recovers that fumble inside the 5 or 10 yard line and does nothing with it. They fumble it back away to Kansas State. So the first half, honestly, I was watching. I was like, this is kind of a tough look for the Big 12 because if this game had been, let's say, NC State versus Louisville, or the ACC equivalent of these two teams in the Big 12, I would have been tuned in because it's the first college football game of the season. No dog in the fight, but definitely wanting to watch every single snap. And if NC State and Louisville put that product on the field, I'd be like, man, this is just some ugly, sloppy football. And so I worry a little bit that the perception of the Big 12, especially because those were two top 25 teams, that you had a lot of people that maybe don't often tune into Big 12 football, and they just thought, oh, well, even the top of this conference is crappy. I think the weather was most of that. It's also week 0, not even week 1. It's August 23rd or whatever it was. They flew to another continent to play the game, and now they're playing in a rainstorm. So I'm willing to give all parties a little bit of mercy in terms of the sloppiness in the first half, and it definitely seemed to get better in the second half. Um, for Big 12 purposes, to me, I kind of had Kansas State at or near the top of my perceived power rankings. Iowa State sort of hovering right below that top tier of contenders, maybe at number 5-ish or 6-ish, but not a whole lot of separation in between the two. And we've talked about the parity in this conference a lot. And so, had Kansas State won this game in terms of the Big 12 pecking order, it would have, I think, further cemented both teams' starting positions, and that Kansas State is one of the favorites. Iowa State probably right on the bubble, but outside looking in. But the opposite result means that unless Kansas State plays Iowa State in the Big 12 title game, they have to get in over Iowa State, which is going to be hard to do if they have the same conference record, given the head to head tiebreaker. Not impossible if multiple teams are involved. Like, let's say there's one 8-1 team and then 4 7-2 teams, and Kansas State and Iowa State are in the mix. I don't even know the tiebreaker rules at that point, but it will be hard for Kansas State to get in over Iowa State if they have the same record. Let's assume that Kansas State doesn't totally run the table from here on out and they drop at least one more game. That would mean Iowa State would have to drop at least 3 Big 12 games to fall below Kansas State's conference record. So to me, you kind of start out the season with a game that has major championship game implications, and the result you got was the one that seemingly made things even messier at the top of the conference. Now, I caveat all of that by saying that Utah Oklahoma State was the first conference game last year that seemingly had Big 12 implications, and it had zero Big 12 championship game implications by the end of the year. So we could look back on this. Kansas State is 11-1, and Iowa State is 7-5, and it didn't matter at all. But it seems like Iowa State threw a very early week 0 wrench in the race at the top of the conference to get to Arlington. Rob, to his credit, pointed out they have a very favorable schedule after this game, and so I think he was sort of positioning that take that if they win this, not only are they 1-0 in conference play before anybody else is, not only do they have a head-to-head over one of the other contenders, but it seemingly gets easier from here. They don't have to play in another country ever again. They might not have to play a team as good as Kansas State again. I don't know if they'll go undefeated, but it seems like they've got some margin for error. And Kansas State, on the other hand, now has very little margin for error, again, unless they're going to play Iowa State in a rematch. So you don't often get a lot of big picture takeaways after the third weekend in August. But I feel like this game likely, we'll look back 3 months from now and say the outcome of this game certainly mattered when it comes to who goes to Arlington and who is maybe on the outside looking in.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think, much was made after the game of, at least from the broadcast, of like these two teams could see a rematch in Arlington come the end of the season. I don't know, man. I just like what I want to believe about what Texas Tech will be this year. And obviously, we won't know that until even much beyond this Saturday. Like, I just want it to look a lot better than than that. And there's a lot of factors that I think hampered both those teams in that game, but it's just like it's okay, if this is the top of the Big 12 and like this is the level that we've got to play at to, be a contender in this conference and to make it to Arlington, like I feel pretty confident that with this roster we can do this.
Yeah, no, I feel like that was another thing that was hard to assess, and I guess we can drill down now to like individual performances and position groups. We'll talk plenty about Avery Johnson, so I'll make a roundabout way of getting there. Iowa State, of course, still playing this cloud defense, usually with three safeties. And the two biggest plays for the Kansas State offense, or two of the three biggest plays, they had the reverse handoff that went for a big gain. But two of the three were either blown coverages, bad angles, or their safeties getting cooked. And Iowa State fans on Twitter educated me that the guilty party on the Cyclones defense in each of those instances was either like a freshman or a walk-on, inexperienced kind of player. And so, of course, they're telling themselves that was a learning experience. It won't happen again. That player will get better throughout the season. But then I saw one of their other safeties, who must have been the third safety or at least opposite side of the field when either of those plays happened, was like the highest graded defensive player in week 0, which I know wasn't a huge sample size. So it was just a mixed bag. You mentioned Big Citrus on the defensive front. Iowa State apparently has one really good safety and then a couple others that might be vulnerable, at least in certain moments throughout the game. Dylan Edwards gets hurt on his first touch of the game, and so we don't get to see Kansas State starting running back. I'm sure that played a factor, and they might look like a different team once he's healthy again. I thought that Iowa State's offensive line, especially in the first half, really bad job in pass pro. Beck was kind of running for his life, led to a strip sack. They were running the ball through their first 20 or 22 carries, had like 1.2, 1.3 yards per carry. Not good at all. Got better in the second half. You mentioned 44 for Kansas State. Not going to try to pronounce the last name. Had a couple really disruptive plays. So again, going back to sort of the mixed bag, you look at Beck's box score, nothing jumps off the page at you. You look at the highlights and you're like, okay, really good throw for a touchdown, really good throw for a touchdown. Escaped a sack. That was really impressive a couple times. Clutch 4th and 3 conversion. Um, they ran an empty set. It was like a quarterback draw for a key first down. So he was like making all the plays when they mattered most, even though the final stats don't wow you. So yeah, on one hand, it felt like a very significant game with Big 12 championship implications. On the other hand, I still feel like I don't know a ton about either team's floor or ceiling because we saw sort of a little bit of everything in terms of the good and the bad. Kansas State, and specifically Avery Johnson, he was part of my reason to pick them to win the Big 12 when we did our poll about a month ago, I think that was. And my justification for that is when you're, I don't know, when you're assessing like a best case scenario outcome, you have to, in my opinion, lean toward highest ceiling and maybe not greatest median reliability. And so that was part of my reasoning was if Avery Johnson does live up to some of this Heisman dark horse and high 4-star recruit kind of hype, and he lives up to what it could look like if probably the fastest player on the field is playing quarterback and takes the next step as a passer, um, runs the ball a little more often than maybe he did last year. They referenced that he put on weight so that he could absorb some of the contact a little better. You're thinking, okay, like his ceiling is probably among the highest in the Big 12, if not the highest in the Big 12, because even the other guys that are better passers than him don't have nearly the athletic ability running the ball. Um, and then I felt like we didn't see a high ceiling player week 0. Now, as has been sent to me dozens of times now by Kansas State fans, I saw the box score and I know the numbers look great. And if he put up those numbers all 12 games, it would be a statistically amazing season. I'm not disputing that. But like anyone else who watched the game, the 2 touchdown passes, one, you give the receiver credit, you give the quarterback credit. It's kind of a slant and go. He cooks the DB, he's wide open. It's a throw that a quarterback can miss theoretically. Avery Johnson made the throw. It was, in my opinion, not a difficult throw. It is a throw that any FBS starter can and should be able to make. It's a throw that, and I don't say this, at least not seriously very often, it's a throw that I could have made. And then you look at the other one to Bradley. A lot of that was after the catch. And you look at the angle the safety took, and I've seen the replay. It's like that ball could have been picked off, at minimum batted down. But you look at the box score, 1 for 1, 65 yards and a touchdown. So the box score shows that as a much better pass than the eye test would give it credit for. Had some good runs. Nothing that just wowed you about how elusive he was or anything like that. And then the throws that he made, tell me if your perception is different, but he especially seemed to kind of find a rhythm like in the third quarter. A lot of intermediate 8 to 12 to 15-yard throws, a lot of open receivers that, again, you give the quarterback credit that he's not missing these passes, but it's not like, okay, he escaped a sack or through that, standing in the face of a 7-man pass rush, fitted into a tight window. It was none of that. It was pretty good concepts. It's like, okay, a 12-yard curl route and the guy's wide open and you play pitch and catch with him. Again, you give them credit that they moved the sticks and completed the pass and all that, but you don't watch that and go, wow, this is really high-level football, and I'm not sure anybody else in the Big 12 can make that play. I didn't get any of that from Avery Johnson's performance. And so this debate that ensued after the game, there's an account that said, here's Avery Johnson's stat line. Did he impress you? And I quote tweeted and said no. Said he wasn't the reason they lost. He didn't play poorly, but I watched every single snap of the game, and he didn't impress me either. It was a solid, average, slightly above average performance. It was a performance I think any above average FBS quarterback probably could have delivered. Drilling down beyond that, though, there are specific moments I'd like to key in on that the box score isn't going to tell you, and Kansas State fans probably aren't going to want to admit to themselves. This is all with the acknowledgement and the context that the weather in the first half sucked, so I fully acknowledge that. But through 2 drives, Kansas State went 3-and-out twice. They didn't have a first down. On the first play of their third drive, do you remember what they dialed up?
Was this where they ran like bubble screen to the left side?
No, I'm pretty sure they motioned him into the slot, motioned Avery Johnson into the slot, then ran like a direct snap, fake halfback reverse, and then the receiver kept the. So I'm like, okay, it's drive number 3, no first down, and what does the offensive coordinator scheme up to get the first down of the game for the offense? Well, he's not putting the ball in Avery Johnson's hands. I found that a little bit noteworthy. Later in the game's second quarter, I believe, they had a 3rd-and-1 where they ran it up the gut. They got stuffed. And then a 4th-and-1 where they ran it up the gut and got stuffed. A lot of criticism levied toward Matt Wells in that moment, rightfully so, probably, if you're not converting 1 yard in 2 plays. Again, notable to me that they chose not to put the ball in his hands on 3rd-and-1 or 4th-and-1. And then you go back, and this was a game that was competitive and close all 60 minutes. The weather was bad for part of the game. It seemed manageable for other portions of the game. Kansas State, the Kansas State offense and Avery Johnson got the ball back 8 times with the score either tied or trailing by 1 possession. And as you know, they did not hold a lead the entire game. So I think that matters. Like if you give a quarterback the ball 8 times within striking distance and he never once leads the offense to even having a lead at any point in the game, I think that's noteworthy. So the box score is one thing, and again, he didn't have a whole lot of just like egregious. He didn't throw 2 picks. He didn't, miss wide open guys or anything like that. But I'm just not ready to give him a ton of credit and say it was really impressive that he didn't miss wide open guys when he didn't ever seemingly take the next step and make a play that the guy on the opposite sideline couldn't make, or make a play that put his team in a position to hold a lead during the game that was close the whole time. So that's what I would have wanted to see. Just like 1 out of 8 opportunities, go give your team the lead, or make one play that lives up to the hype that kind of surrounded you coming into this game. And I just didn't see that. And, you can't add that much nuance on Twitter when you're going back and forth with fans, but it was like everything I said that was just, again, not blaming him, not saying he's trash, he's garbage, he can't throw, but just saying it wasn't impressive to me. They seemingly perceive that as he sucks, he's garbage, he can't throw, he's why we lost. And I don't think any of that is the case either. I think it's pretty squarely in the middle. He did fine. He didn't play like a player that was going to elevate them to Big 12 championship status, and he's also not the reason they lost. Like I think all of those can be true at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think they really used him as a game manager. Like the offense felt very vanilla to me. What they were asking of him looked very vanilla to me. And that's just not who he is as a quarterback. Like he has very high highs and very low lows. And I think you live with that at times because he can be so explosive. But to just kind of ask him to go out there and, throw a couple slants, throw it to the sideline, throw some curl routes, throw some posts, like you want that guy to be dynamic and make explosive plays because he's capable of it. And yeah, it's going to burn you at times, and maybe you don't want to do that when you're, not ahead in the game or can't really establish a lead and hold it. But I mean, if they're going to be great and if they're going to hit their ceiling, you've got to live with some of that. And you could say the same thing about Rocco Becht, but I also think that's kind of who Rocco Becht is as a quarterback. He's going to go out there and he's going to execute. It's not always going to be sexy, but it's going to be precise. And with what they were doing in their run game, particularly with Hanson, their back, who I was not expecting to see a lot of in that game. I thought Abu Sama was going to be their primary back this season. They had established enough dynamic on offense to where, Rocco Becht didn't have to push it. But was Kansas State doing that? Not in my mind. I mean, you lose your top back on before you even play an offensive snap. And then you don't really utilize Avery Johnson in the ways that Avery Johnson can be explosive. And so I think that's going to be part of the balancing act. Maybe you didn't want to utilize that again in bad weather or when you're down in the game, but I just think he's an explosive guy, whether you love it or hate it. He's going to make mistakes when you allow him to be an explosive guy, but I mean, if you're going to win games in this conference and against defenses like Iowa State's, you're just going to have to live with it.
Yeah, and of course, naturally, the conversation did pivot to a comparison between Avery Johnson and Rocco Beck. And again, got plenty of screenshots showing the box scores side by side. But let's talk about comparable moments side by side. Like I said, 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1. Kansas State, this was the other part of this. Kansas State either didn't trust Avery Johnson in those spots, or their offensive coordinator was too stupid to involve Avery Johnson in those moments. And this is where they're between a rock and a hard place because we told them for the last 6 months that their offensive coordinator was not going to be super great. And you bring up a moment like that, like, oh, well, his offensive coordinator held him back. Like, well, why would that be the case if Matt Wells was such a good offensive coordinator hire? And it was this weird circular. It was like Avery Johnson played awesome. Um, he was just held back by his offensive coordinator. But even though he was held back, he still played awesome. And even though the offensive coordinator held him back, it was still a really good hire, and he's just fine as an OC. Like they wanted to have their cake and eat it too on both the quarterback and the offensive coordinator. But 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, Kansas State doesn't put the ball in Avery Johnson's hands. 4th and 3, by the way, great call by Matt Campbell not to kick the field goal to go up 27-21. I think that's what it would have been, or whatever the score was. They were up 3 and opted not to kick the field goal. You got a chance to go 3 yards and win the game. That's exactly what they did. 4th and 3, they put the ball in Rocco Beck's hands. There's a tough pass rush. He makes the right hot read, gets into the flats, easy first down. Clutch moment, makes the right read, makes a throw. It wins them the game. Both players had 2 touchdown passes. Avery Johnson's, to my eye, one was a blown coverage. Again, good route, and he didn't miss the throw once the receiver was wide open. And the other one, I thought the safety took a bad angle that should have broken up the pass. Instead, it resulted in a 65-yard touchdown. You look at Beck's 2 touchdown passes, contested catches in the end zone. The receiver has maybe 1 or 2 yards of separation, if that. A much smaller window that Beck can put those in and find success, and he did. And then, yeah, Beck threw a pass that hit a Kansas State player right in the chest. Probably should have been picked off, and it wasn't. Avery Johnson earlier in the game, airmailed one, hits an Iowa State DB right in the hands. He drops it. So they both got away with what should have been 1 pick. So 2 touchdowns each, 1 would-be pick each, and then 1 4th and short scenario each. Both INTs dropped, so you say, okay, that's a draw. I thought both of Beck's touchdown passes were more impressive than both of Johnson's. And I thought Beck was better in that clutch 4th and short moment than Avery Johnson was or was allowed to be in a similar type of 3rd and short, 4th and short moment. So you can show me the box scores all you want. I thought Beck outplayed him, especially in the moments that really mattered. And I think his team won as a result of that.
I think it's well said. I think that's all I've got on the game itself. Any thoughts on family disputes?
Oh, gosh, yes. I completely forgot about that. So, what a tough week 0 for Kansas State. Like, the game is one thing, and I know it's in a vacuum, devoid of all the other context that surrounded this game, both before and after. It sucks to lose to a rival. It sucks to lose your first game of the season when you've got high expectations, and they did. They were ranked 17th and picked to win the Big 12. It sucks to win a close game that you feel like you could have won. It sucks that stuff that was out of your control played a factor, like the weather and playing in Ireland instead of at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. But man, they just got piled on after the game. Like the minor league baseball team in Omaha is throwing shade at them on Twitter. The quarterback's dad is fighting the quarterback's brother in the streets after the game. The fans are pissed off at the head coach because he was kind of just talking like, well, it's just one game. We've got 11 more. Like, didn't really seem that bothered by the loss. Um, just a no good week 0 for Kansas State. I mean, I legitimately for that. And I've been bitching for years about you know, power forward early in the non-con, and looking K State fans this week, I'm like, I don't know if I really want any part of that now.
I
Did I
think,
cut out?
yeah,
God dang it! Am I back now?
you're back with me now. Yeah.
It just seemed like Kansas State fans weren't having a good time. So I don't know if I would want to do a week 0 matchup like that anymore.
Yeah, pretty wild. Saw the story when it was first happening. Thought it was fake. Obviously, there was a video of the fight, but I'm not familiar with Kansas State's family situation, so I'm not like, oh yeah, that's Avery Johnson's dad and brother fighting. Um, Another factor there that I think could add to some confusion of tying those two pieces together. But then, like, I think it's Tim Fitzgerald was like, we were reporting that Avery Johnson's dad and brother got in a physical altercation. I'm like, okay, this is real. This is insane. They have to issue like a public apology. Um, and then like Kansas State's official like football account is like tweeting out numbers from the game of like TV ratings and like, yeah, this is the brand. And I don't know, man. I'm glad that we that was not my team this past weekend and the days that followed. That's for sure.
Well, then there were like conspiracy theories that Dylan Edwards wasn't even hurt. He was just pouting. And I guess it got so bad with like fans DMing him or whatever that he released a statement basically saying, like, I was hurt. I would never quit on my team. Just, I mean, so much drama around all of it for K State fans. Um, it had me thankful that I was just a neutral observer and we've got Pine Bluff out of the gates. It's kind of nice to ease into the college football season because there's going to be plenty of tense weekends where you're playing a good Kansas State team or Oklahoma State or you've got rivalry stuff. I don't know. As happy as I am that college football is back, I don't know if I would want all of that week 0. The quarterback's dad fighting the quarterback's brother, and the running back responding to allegations on Twitter, and flying halfway across the world to lose in disappointing fashion. I mean, it just seemed like a brutal, brutal weekend for Kansas State fans.
Definitely not fun. Hopefully, our season opener is a lot smoother. Doesn't involve any family disputes. Texas Tech opens with Arkansas Pine Bluff on Saturday. Not going to sit here and pretend like I know a single person on the Arkansas Pine Bluff roster. If I know anything about their team, um, not interested in it whatsoever. Have not seen a spread for this game. I think it'll probably be the steepest spread in the Big 12 this weekend. Look, if Texas Tech does not dominate this game from start to finish, it's concerning. If you mess around like you did last season in your season opener, it's going to be a very, very bad look. Um, I'm going to assume the best and assume that Texas Tech absolutely handles business in this game like they should. There are three things that I'm looking for in this game. One of them is Baron Morton. I don't care what stats he puts up in this game. I don't want him to play the full game. I don't think he will have to. I want to see what he looks like delivering the football, how his arm speed looks, how he looks reading the defense, if he looks comfortable evading the pocket, and scrambling a little bit. I want Tech to absolutely dominate the line of scrimmage. I want a lot of quarterback pressure, multiple sacks, and preventing your quarterback from getting hit and averaging like 7 yards a carry. Maybe that's ambitious, but big gaps. You've talked about this being a point of emphasis all year long. It's time to go out there and shove around an opponent that you should shove around. And then the last thing I'm really looking for in this game is the running back split. How much does Cam Dickey carry the ball? How much does Jacoby Williams carry the ball? What does that split look like? And how does this offense kind of try to find its feet without Quentin Joyner? So that's really all I care about in this game. By God, if it's close, it's going to be a mess. But I think Texas Tech is the far better team, and they should prove it in this game.
Yeah, I'm also going to say I want. Well, there's four things I'm curious about. One of them is mostly football related. Question I have is about tight end usage. First off, agree with everything you mentioned. One of the big question marks I have is tight end usage. In past iterations of the Mac Leftwich offense, the tight end has not had a ton of production. And Rob indicated that Leftwich said basically, like, I didn't have the horses previously to run a lot of personnel packages with tight ends, but he was at least giving lip service to the idea that Texas Tech has good tight ends on the roster, so you'll see more of them this year. So actual play design, run versus pass, is a little bit less interesting to me versus just how often is a tight end or more than one tight end on the field. That's number one. Number two, I'm going to show you a photo, Money, of me at the game last year against Abilene Christian, presumably second half, and you could tell me, how I look in this picture. Um,
Miserable.
I do not want to look like that at all during the 60 minutes on Saturday. I think I was watching that game with Big Hen, and I think if I remember the quote exactly right, I told him that if we lose to Abilene Christian, I'm climbing to the top of the double T scoreboard and jumping off of it. So avoiding any sentiments like that is goal number two, or thing I'm most interested in seeing, number two, on Saturday. Number three is no injuries. Like, just get out of this game clean. And then number four is I would love for there to be absolutely nothing on Twitter about this game or any of the players or their families fighting or faking injuries. Um, just like a final score graphic, maybe a link to the post-game press conference, and then we're on to week two. That would be great. So those are the four things I'm looking for: is tight end personnel usage, and not wanting to jump off the double T scoreboard because we've got Pine Bluff in overtime, no Twitter drama after the game, no injuries.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a green chili corn dip this
Okay.
Saturday. I would like to enjoy that green chili corn dip, drink way too much beer, and watch a stress-free Texas Tech football game. That's my goal.
I want to be borderline mad that I took the time to drive to Lubbock to watch a game that was 38-0 at halftime. Of course, won't regret it because if I'm not at the Jones, I'll be hanging with the boys. But I want it to be like, yeah, that wasn't really a good use of my time this weekend. I want it to be that much of a blowout.
Yeah, bummed I won't be there this weekend. I will be there to support my good friend BJ Simmons. The BYU game first weekend in November. So looking forward to that. Um, I hope it's a good crowd. I saw they still had tickets available today. So hopefully that gets to a sellout. Stadium's rocking, and everyone adheres to the new tortilla rules. Which I don't know. Did you see Gio's comments on that today?
No.
So he did a little, I guess, a little press conference on the field today. Shout out to Shelby at Sing Scarlet for posting a video about it. But they've kind of got a system down for this. So he's like, opening kickoff, let those suckers fly. Like, if you have a tortilla, throw it. And then after opening kickoff, they're going to put a PA announcement through the stadium saying, please do not throw food or any other items onto the field. If food or other items are thrown onto the field after that, um, there will be a video from Joey Maguire that plays on the video board that says, please don't do this. Don't hurt our team. We don't need a penalty, and so on and so forth. And I think he said there's another video that will play if it happens again after that. So I think they know that, like, look, like the 15-1 thing is one thing, right? But I think what has happened from this is it's like F the rules, like we're gonna do what we want. Traditions are traditions, but now we're at a point where like we're playing a football game in 3 days, and if like the mentality and the messaging is just like it's our way or the highway, like are we gonna rack up like 5 15-yard penalties in the span of this game? Like I think there's been some internal discussions over the last couple of weeks of like we've probably got to figure out a way to actually mitigate this so that it doesn't hurt our team. And I think that's fair. I think Texas Tech fans should buy into that. I get it. The tortilla tradition is incredible. It's a part of Texas Tech's fabric as a program, but there's got to be steps to mitigate this. I don't like that it has to be like a video of Joey Maguire like saying like don't do this, but you've got to try something to prevent yourself from just constantly being in a hole. In terms of field position.
Yeah, and I've got mixed feelings on that because I feel like a lot of times when either Judge Parrish, I don't really remember it as much with Casey Cowan, but whoever the stadium announcer is, or they play a video from Joey, I feel like it makes it worse. At least with the demographic of like drunk students, like the last thing that a drunk 20-year-old college student wants to be told is what to do. And as soon as you tell them like, hey, it's really important that you don't throw a water bottle on the field, some moron who, was me 12 years ago was like, there's a water bottle on the field. Like, I think it almost makes it worse. So I'm curious to see how well that goes for Texas Tech. I would really hate to get a 15-yard penalty in like an actual game that mattered. I'm still a little bit unsure how strict they're actually going to enforce this, or if they're going to use some discretion and say it's okay that a tortilla is close to the back pylon when the ball is spotted at the 25-yard line. We'll see. I'm very curious to see how all that plays out. And hopefully it's one of the more interesting parts of Saturday's entire production.
If you had to, what would you set the spread at for this game?
Probably like 30 and a half or 34 and a half, something like that.
I think
I
that's
feel
where
like
I'm at
that's
too.
usually pretty close to what it is when you've got like a good FBS team versus a not notable FCS. I feel like the only FCS teams that really get any love with the point spread is like, your North Dakota States or Eastern Washington back in the day. Um, a program like that.
Yeah, my gut tells me it could be a lot steeper than that, but I just don't know how the books will really behave with this game. I think ESPN's models had the final projected score of this game at like 63-0. So
Oh, wow.
the
Yeah, I
computers
saw
are
a
telling
couple
me
like
that this
that.
should not be a sweat.
I can't remember who Wisconsin is playing, but I think it was Wisconsin. Maybe it's Missouri. The the spread is like 49 and the total is like 51 and a half. It is Illinois. And it's basically like, will the other team score? Um, while team B just goes to whatever the point total for the entire game is. Um, some books won't let you make like related bets on that, but you can kind of there's a way to thread the needle and lose the bet, but if the spread and the total are like that close, if you bet on the team to cover, then it's probably going to go over and vice versa. So you could just parlay a cover in the over or a cover the other way in an under. Sometimes they'll let you do it, sometimes they won't. But that'd be great if the spread's 49.5 and the total is 54.5. That's probably a good sign.
Ask you about spreads because we're going to do some Big 12 picks as we usually do every football season. Not picking every Big 12 game this weekend because there's quite a bit of junk on the schedule, but there are some really good matchups that the Big 12 is featured in this weekend. Let's start with Nebraska Cincinnati at Arrowhead tomorrow night. All of these spreads are from my lunch break today on Wednesday, so these could see some movement before kickoff, but alas, Nebraska is a 6.5 point favorite in this game. What's your read on this one?
My heart says Cincinnati. Neutral site. I think the crowd will definitely favor Nebraska, but it's not a true road game for Cincinnati. Head coach fighting for his life, and I think a pretty good, above average experienced quarterback. And I would love the Big 12 to beat a Big 10 team that was a blue blood 25 years ago. But my head says Nebraska and Matt Rule. Is this year 3 in Nebraska for Matt Rule?
I think that's right.
It's about the time he figured it out at Baylor. When I say figured it out, I mean won a lot of games, but none of them against FBS opponents or Power 4 opponents that finished the season ranked. Because I don't think he's ever done that in his entire career. Maybe once. I can't remember if the stat is 0 times or 1 time. My head says Nebraska. My heart says Cincinnati. But if we're making picks, I'll say Nebraska.
I'm going to go with Cincinnati to cover a 6.5 point dog. That feels too generous for me. I like Brendan Sorsby. Maybe it's because he carved you up last season. Although you won the game, he looked really, really good in Lubbock. Matt Rule just announced like last week that he's doing a podcast. Like we're like a week out from kickoff, and you're starting a podcast. You're not locked in. I don't respect it, and I think I trust Sorsby more than I trust Rayola at this point. So sorry, Rob, but I'm going with the Bearcats on this one. One of the more intriguing games in my mind on the schedule is Friday night, and it is Auburn at Baylor. Um, this is a game that I think will tell me a lot about how I really feel about Baylor this year. I feel like I've had a tough time getting a read on this team throughout the season. I think they are strong at quarterback. Losing one of their backup running backs for the year is tough. I just need to see this team get on the field. But they're home dogs to a Hugh Freeze coach team. Baylor is a 2.5 point dog right now against Auburn. I've seen some of the On3 guys picking Auburn to cover that 2.5 point favorite spread. I'm picking Baylor to cover 2.5. I would pick Baylor money line in this game. I think it would be damning on Baylor to not win this game, which may be unconventional for what you would typically think when an SEC opponent comes and plays you. But I think Baylor is the better team. I think they have the better quarterback. I think they have the better system. So I'm going with the Bears to cover, and I would again pick the Bears to win this game straight up.
I want to paint a picture for you and our listeners, Money. Imagine you're 18 years old and you're growing up in like Westlake, Bee Cave, Texas. Dad's a plastic surgeon. Mom is a stay-at-home mom / influencer. You're rich as hell. And it's time for you to spread your wings and fly, and you go off to college. And so, of course, they send you to Baylor. and you're just jazzed to be in Waco. 18 years old, freshman. You just went through orientation. You met all these other really rich people, Baptist as heck, and like now the school year starts and it's college football season, and you've got SEC Auburn Hugh Freeze coming to town, and you're in the Baylor line, and they give you a yellow jersey and they say run across the field, and you run and you look like a total doofus, but your other dudes to your left and right, they also look like dorks, but you're running because you're hyped to play Auburn. The atmosphere in that stadium is going to be unlike anything Waco has ever seen. I mean, it could approach levels of like median FBS home game on any given Saturday because they are just psyched for the season opener against Auburn. I think it's going to be as electric as anything can be in that stadium, which is not very electric. The Baylor line is going to be it's going to look like a lightning bolt. They're going to run so fast across the field. I, I'm a Big 12 guy, but I've got my limits. I don't root for Baylor. So my heart says Auburn, but my head says there's no way that Baylor doesn't win this game with that kind of atmosphere. And, that freshman student is going to have just the memory of a lifetime watching them beat Auburn. So I'm with you on this one. I think, unfortunately, Baylor's going to win and cover, obviously.
I think if they don't, again, it's an SEC opponent, but they would fall dramatically in my very uneducated Big 12 power rankings if they lose this game. Maybe that's unfair, but I just think they should be the better team in this game.
Yeah, I know that national media and Kentucky fans that root for other teams in the SEC wouldn't agree with this, but I don't view Auburn as anything more than like a middle of the road, maybe slightly above average Big 12 team. So if Baylor can't handle them at home, I agree with you that that would not be befitting of a top 3 or 4 Big 12 team. Now if they win, if they handle them, they win by 10 or 14, and they look good doing it. I think it says the opposite, that it does kind of cement Baylor as a top third ish of the conference kind of squad.
Also on Friday night, same kickoff time, I believe, is Georgia Tech at Colorado. Very fun game. Going to be getting some quad box action in on Friday night for sure with these two games going on at the same time. Is Colorado without Travis Hunter and Shador Sanders? What does their quarterback situation look like this year? What does their defense look like this year? Georgia Tech plays a very physical brand of football. They get Haynes King back. They have an experienced quarterback compared to a team that, do they play Salter or do they play the true freshman? What do they do there? I'm picking Georgia Tech to cover 4.5. I don't like it on the road. Um, but I think at this point, the experience and the retention means more to me than the big gaps that I see Colorado with. And I think Colorado can be a decent team in the Big 12, but I do think it will take some time to figure out how to fill those two guys, their absence. And so I think Georgia Tech covers as a 4.5 point favorite and wins this game pretty convincingly.
Did you see the Sonny Dykes quote about playing Dion 2 years ago in TCU's opener?
I don't think so.
He basically, I'm paraphrasing, basically said that like the Dion hype machine was more of a distraction for TCU than it was for Colorado, and that he sensed like right before the game that his team wasn't taking Colorado very seriously, and I don't know if he knew they were going to lose outright as 20-point favorites in that game, but it did kind of shift my thinking about how how Colorado can be a tricky opponent just because like the circus is in town when you play them. It felt that way to me in Lubbock last year. It wasn't they weren't a top 10 team or anything, but it and I remember telling Rob like it felt like you were playing Texas or OU in the old Big 12. It was like the game of the year, Oregon, because it was Shador, Travis Hunter, Dion, and it was just this spectacle. So, and then you look at a team like BYU through 12 games last year, had the exact same record as Colorado, very similar resume. But BYU, their culture, their head coach is like all about tough nose. We're gonna be focused. We're not gonna be a circus, and they manhandled them in the Alamo Bowl. And so both of those things, I was like started thinking about Sonny Dykes' perspective on this, and like the teams that had success against Colorado versus the teams that didn't. It does make me wonder that like a huge part of any matchup between Dion and whoever is like how well does that team do they just treat it like a regular game and say we've got film to watch, we've got a game plan to execute, and we're gonna go play 85 snaps of offense or defense and either win or lose this thing, or are they like looking at social media all week trying to find a quote or remember the Colorado State quarterback? There was all like the war of words and social media back and forth, and they got crushed by Colorado last year. North Dakota State, an FCS team, played Colorado very well. Again, reputation as just like a nuts and bolts, X's and O's, black and white program. So I wonder if that's like the recipe to beating Colorado is just like how well can you block out the noise? Can you ignore the fact that their head coach is an NFL Hall of Famer and just play ball? All that to say, like I don't know if Georgia Tech can do that or not. I thought the Sonny Dykes thing was interesting. Colorado under Dion seemingly has a really good home field advantage, like very electric crowds. I'll pick them to cover, but as long as Dion is there, Colorado will be the team that I have the worst read on. As long as he's acquiring talent like he is, I think their ceiling could be through the roof. And I think if some of the concerns about Dion's leadership style and the culture and Shador saying he doesn't even know who his ex teammates' names are, like if you have a locker room like that, the bottom could also fall out. So I never really have a good read on Colorado. I would never bet on Colorado in real life. I will pick them to cover just because I think home field is enough against a team like Georgia Tech that I don't think has a whole lot of juice. But I found that perspective on what it's like to line up against Dion, a Dion coached Colorado team, to be pretty illuminating.
I think you have a fair point about the hype machine. Maybe you feel differently than I do, but I just don't feel like it's there this year. Like I feel like this off season I've just kept being like, oh yeah, Colorado. Whereas like last year it was like Colorado. Like this is the team to watch. Like, will the talent really pan out? Will it come to fruition? They're being talked about regardless. But this year I just feel like it's crickets.
And you could be right. Like maybe the shine has worn off a little bit. That TCU game, of course, was game one at Colorado, and so it was
Hmm.
that hype was maybe more than it ever was since. But last year they had the Heisman front runner for most of the season. They didn't start that strong, if you remember, but they rounded into a Big 12 contender, and they were in that tiebreaker at the end of it. Candidly, I don't feel like Texas Tech responded well to it. Joey was talking all week about Dion and how they go back and we're going to wear the special Mahomes uniforms, and we probably let the Dion noise that surrounds him get to us a little too much. Now we didn't lose as 20-point favorites like TCU did, but you could be right. Maybe the shine has worn off a little bit. Because especially that out of the gates when they beat TCU and then they played Colorado State in that fourth window and it broke like every ESPN viewership record for that time slot. And then like they played Nebraska on Big Fox. And it was like it was insane. I mean, it was Dion mania. And then last year, I think it was elevated because of how good Travis Hunter and Shador were. But now it's like year three Dion. We've seen him in big national TV spots. We've kind of been there, done that. It's not new anymore. and they don't have two of the top 5 Heisman Trophy finishers on the roster. At least I don't think. So maybe it'll be a little bit easier for teams to handle this year when they're going up against all of that.
Let's stay on the West Coast. Utah is a 5.5-point favorite at UCLA against Nico Amalieven. Interesting game. I don't think the home field advantage makes much of a difference when you're playing UCLA. This is physical Utah football versus West Coast Flash. This is a game that I am picking Utah to cover. 5.5 does feel a little risky to me. But I think that Donovan Dent is the truth. I think they've got great offensive linemen. I don't know what UCLA looks like at all outside of the quarterback position. So I'm just leaning on what I know about Utah as a physical football team, and I'm going to pick them to cover 5.5.
Yeah, my head and my heart say Utah. I don't like rooting for Utah, but the Big 12 does have to win some of these Power 4 non-conference games to get a little credit. And better Utah than Baylor and TCU, which I know we'll get to in a minute. I don't think UCLA is that good, and I'm higher on Utah than most people. The 5.5, though, they're begging you to take Utah. Because if you're just a casual, you're like, oh, it's never going to be 5 or 5.5. It's going to be 6 or 7. Just because you don't win a football game by 5 points ever. So that worries me. It feels like bait. Feels like a trap line. So I'm going to go against my head and my heart and pick UCLA, even though I don't believe it. But I can't bring myself to pick a team to lay 5.5 specifically. I don't like that. It doesn't feel right.
Utah's quarterback is also Devin Dampier, not Donovan Dent, former
I
New
thought that's what
Mexico
you meant,
point
but I was
guard.
like, maybe they have a dude named Donovan Dent as well. But I thought you probably meant Devin Dent, but I wasn't confident enough to correct you. It's like, oh, maybe Donovan Dent is their, tight end or something. I don't know.
Just too locked in on basketball.
Yeah.
One of the more intriguing games this weekend, I believe this game is Monday night. Uh, TCU as a 3.5-point favorite in Chapel Hill. In Bill Belichick's collegiate coaching debut. Already love the shenanigans in this game. Bill Belichick is refusing to release a depth chart because, of course, and so TCU is also refusing to release a depth chart. I think I saw today that Bill Belichick and Jordan Hudson were filing a trademark claim for Gold Digger, and they're going to release a jewelry line called
Oh
Gold
my
Digger.
God.
Um, uh, it's incredible. The stories on this relationship never end. Um, I just can't wait to see this play out. I have no idea if it's going to have some degree of success or be a complete disaster. Um, I am picking TCU to cover and win this game. Um, but I have no read on this whatsoever. I have no idea what UNC is going to look like. I think TCU, if they have a good run game to complement Josh Hoover, can be really good this year. But again, I think that stadium will be rocking. I think they'll show up for Bill Belichick in that opening game, but I think the Horned Frogs are the better team. But again, it feels just very odd to just be picking a game in college football where Bill Belichick is involved, let alone be picking against him. But that's what I'm gonna go with.
Yeah, I'm sure this is baked into the line a little bit, but there's obviously, to me, so much potential for the bottom to fall out in Chapel Hill this year. And we're talking about a football genius, and so I could be wrong. And maybe they're schematically one of the best teams in college football this year. But it could also be a disaster. And It is tough to go halfway across the country. I think their stadium is 80,000 ish. Like you said, it's going to be rocking on Labor Day. But I just can't shake the thought that this is not going to go well with like Bill Belichick when he was great in New England wasn't dating an 18-year-old and didn't have all of this linger. He was just a football guy. You know, the only thing you could meme about Belichick in those days was his cut off sweatshirt sleeves. It was all business. And so this version of Belichick that is like on the red carpet and trying to patent the term gold digger so he can sell a line of jewelry is just so foreign to me. And yeah, it just seems like, hey, there's a high probability this is going to be a disaster. So I would love to pick against TCU. I don't want TCU to win this game, but I think they will cover. I don't know if they'll win, but I think they'll at least cover.
We can speed run these next two. These are a little bit steeper than the ones that we've been picking. Start with South Dakota at Iowa State. One of the more interesting FCS opponents in South Dakota. Iowa State is a 14.5 point favorite. I'm going to pick South Dakota to cover that spread. I think Iowa State wins by double digits, but I do not think that they cover 14.5.
Completely agree. You're coming down off a win over a ranked rival. You're traveling across the ocean. That 14 and a hook is a little bit scary, and South Dakota's a pretty good FCS program. Uh, every casual bettor that was watching week 0 is going to pick Iowa State in that game because why wouldn't you? So, yeah, give me South Dakota.
And to round out our slate, we've got Hawaii playing at Arizona. Arizona is a 17.5 point favorite in this game. Hawaii has a game under their belt. They just knocked off Stanford on a game winning drive where their quarterback was playing on one leg. It ruled. It was college football at its best. And I think that they are going to carry that momentum into this game and cover 17.5 pretty easily. I think Brent Brennan is a bum. And I think Hawaii is going to show him why he should not just be wearing a lei every week on the sidelines. They are the kings of the lei, and they're going to use those powers to cover this spread.
Give me Arizona.
I like it. All right, those are our Big 12 picks. We'll see how we fare after some really good football. I'm really excited that we're here.
You know what I can't wait for, Money?
Tell me about it.
Is for Rob to come back after his brief hiatus here and tell us that he would have picked, however these games unfold, he would have gone 6-0, 8-0, however many we just picked. He just didn't get a chance to obviously say that on a public platform where it was recorded, but he will have gotten all of them right, I promise.
I think we had a similar situation last year in week 1.
Remind me, this sounds vaguely familiar. What happened?
I just think there was some discourse around when picks were made and who would have gone undefeated had they made their picks at the correct time. Not throwing shade at anybody, but
Yeah, I feel like now that you say it, and I don't remember the full controversy. I think maybe me and Rob tied on overall record, but I accused him of cheating and tallying it up wrong. And then there was like a tiebreaker controversy. So nobody did the week 1 punishment, which would have been the This Is Our Colts remix. Something, and I really can't remember the particulars, but yeah. Hopefully we can avoid such controversy this year.